Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Rams Review Podcast Preview Show. And it's game 20, I believe. Or is it 21? It could be 21. And we are hosting Fratton Park's very own Portsmouth FC. Always a ding-dong of a game against the Pompey. And who better to discuss Pompey and the trials and tribulations of their season so far is a good friend of the show, Hugh Bunce from the PO Forecast. Hugh, good evening, sir.
There we go. Microphone's back. Good evening. Thanks for having me back on. It's quite nice to have us back for a second year in the championship, isn't it? It wasn't a one and done. So we're back here. We're back on the podcast and ready to have a look at another game for us, Derby Pompey.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were relatively surprised that both survived, and Oxford, to be fair, all three managed to cling on at the end of last season, and that's probably where we're best starting the show. How was the feeling at Pompey regarding the end of the season? Was because obviously it was nervous for us all. You had that really good, consistent second half of the season that always sort of kept your head above the water. Did you always feel you were confident that it was going to be sorted and you'll be safe?
100%. I knew we were going to be safe and we're bottom of the league around Christmas. No, of course not. We started off effectively trying to play quite a progressive style, trying to take up the sort of a little bit tougher, but trying to move the ball around like we did in League One. So we tried to use that, take that as the blueprint and sort of roll that into the championship. We got to November and quite easily realised that wasn't going to work. And John Mousinho has come out and said he went to the players and was like, look, might have got this wrong. Scrap this. We're going to play completely differently. So we basically changed the way we played. We went to a more direct style, a kind of upbeat, high pressing. Turning the ball over in the final third, making Fratton Park a real fortress to play against. And when you sort of use that mixture of high pressing football, small pitch, good home form, and that's really what carried us. And we were hoping that would carry into this year, which hasn't really happened.
Well, we'll bring it on to this year because Fratton Park is still a fortress. As looking at your current stats, you're 21st in the table, 20 points. But I believe you've only had one away victory, which is the very first one of the season, which, if I remember rightly, and I've got on my notes, Oxford away 1-0. And six goals only scored away from home. Has there been a dip in form because of players coming into the team and the gelling isn't quite there yet, or has there just been a plateau of, I don't know, it's has the form just gone? Talk to me.
There's a bit of a cauldron of different issues, I think, and I think from a playing style, we tried to play a bit more of a conservative style away from home, and actually talking to Derby fans listening now is quite a good example because last season we got tonked away from home frequently. And it almost happened that we sort of rotated our team and almost writing off some away games. We lost 4-0 to you last season. We got battered by Stoke, battered by West Brom. And I think we tried to just make ourselves a little bit more difficult to play against away from home. We've got a couple of draws out of it. Hasn't really helped over the long term. So away form is never really been something that was good last season at all as well. I think we only won two away from home last season. So going into this season, yes, we're not being great away from home. We haven't got battered as much, but at the same time, you would have some clubs with fans just not turning up to the away fixtures. And I think it's credit to us lot really that, we're still travelling in numbers considering how rubbish we've been away from home. There is some positivity I'll come on to a bit later in the most recent game. But as far as away games go, so far this season, it's been tough pickings for Pompey fans.
Is it because obviously you're one of the most southern clubs? In fact, you probably are the most southern club. Is it purely transportation, or do the players and the staff go up the day before on any trip, say, north of Watford, or do you normally travel on the day as a team?
I've got a feeling it's the weather. We always sign players from Europe, and they really come to Pompey purely because it's on the south coast and it's sunny. And once you go any further north, they're just like, "This is dreadful. Why did I come and sign here?" No, there's no real reason why. I think we just managed to get in a situation where there's a mentality at home, and we sort of believe that we can. The players believe that you can beat anyone at home, and you hear them going on and look. let's be honest, right? All players play up to fan bases and go, oh, without you guys, we wouldn't be able to get these results. But I feel like the fans sort of bought, the players already bought into that a little bit. And it gets to the stage where away from home, even though we're traveling with numbers and stuff, there was just a little bit of a lack of confidence. And at the end of the day, we struggled. So look, we have done it this season. We went away to Leicester, went 1-0 down. Came back in the second half, and we looked brilliant in the second half. So it's not a complete write off. And I think Derby fans shouldn't feel that we are completely rubbish every time. This team is capable of turning up for 45 minutes, I'd say, in an away game. And you look at Southampton away, to be fair, they had that absolute rubbish idiot in charge at the time, which I'm very sad that he's gone. But at the same time, again, they probably could have, we could have got a result as well there. So it is possible, but we're not going to look like world beaters, definitely, at Pride Park.
Well, let's talk about your manager, John Mousinho, because obviously he's still in his 30s, 39, I believe. His reputation does increase by season. And I always like to hear his interviews, and I've always been impressed with John Mousinho because he's a hard-working guy in football. He's played at various clubs in lower levels. Most Derby fans will remember him towards the end of his career, playing over 100 times at our friends across the A38, Burton Albion. Is he still very positive? Does he come across as he tried to play a different style this year, or does he continue with the press that you've just forementioned?
No, he sort of went away from that press a little bit this season. Look, John Mousinho is a good young manager. There's no doubt about it. He got us promoted as champions in our first year, in his first year in management, and did a great job changing the way we played last season to keep us up with quite a few games to go last season in the championship. The fact is that we've got quite a low budget as a team. So resources are quite scarce, really, from how much the owners are willing to put into the club. So when you've got a manager who's maybe getting all the most out of the players he's got to his disposal, I think that's kind of the situation with John Mousinho at Pompey at this moment in time. Pompey do a lot of their recruitment based on the sort of in the bargain basement, I suppose. Or, we bought a lot of players from Australia. We'll come on to talk about, our centre midfielder that came on and made an impact the other day. He's come from Budapest. And, these are sort of non-traditional, non-championship, players that you're bringing in. Last season it worked. We went to West Ham and said, loan us a centre midfielder. And they loaned us Freddie Potts. And, we turned him into an absolute quality player. But you look at him now, he's taking corners and free kicks for West Ham in the Premier League and he's starting. So how do you replace that player in the centre of midfield? You're not always going to hit. And I think this season, it's just been a case of John Mousinho looking at the players and the depth we've got and thinking, it's going to be difficult to turn this pumpkin into something really good.
Well, you said previously that you want to come on to something positive. Let's talk about that positive now. Do you see is there an upturn in form, or where does this positivity come from?
Yeah, I think from the positivity, we look at the Blackburn game, we've had a load of players out injured. And because of that, our attack in particular and at centre back has really been problems for us. Poor old Josh Murphy on his own on the left wing, the only creative outlet, and people just know that, so they were double marking him. And now Callum Lang's been back, and he scored 10 goals last season by Christmas before he got injured. So we now have this a bit more kind of natural balance. We've got Lang on the right, Murphy on the left. Connor Chaplin then looked better in the centre of in the cam role. Bishop came on. He'd been dropped for a couple of games. I think he just needed that rest, that reset. So then we've got a situation where we've had very slow midfielders. We bought a Mark Kudnowski. He played further forward, and suddenly there was a bit more balance. The team, it was very disjointed in the centre of midfield, from the defence to midfield to attack. It was all really disjointed. And then when it got to the attack, it was like, well, if Josh Murphy's not going to pull out a wonder cross, who's going to score? So it actually looks like if we take that sort of momentum from the 55th minute on into this Derby game, and we use those players who are now back fit, this team does have the ability with, a front four, should we say, of Bishop, Lang, Murphy, Connor Chaplin, and then you add in Segacic, who's got 4 goals for us as well. He's a very young Australian we've got. That's quite a dynamic front line. It's just, can they stay fit and can we get the ball to them?
Yeah, I think Derby's Achilles heel is they're very susceptible to a really poor start in a game. And if you look at Derby's form, and you've probably dipped in it for your own pod, we are unbelievably bad to slow starts. Like Leicester tore us apart, and I think if Portsmouth are going to continue that momentum from the previous game, they definitely have to start fast because Derby do not come out the blocks quick. Regarding Pompey and sort of the recruitment, is this been sort of have they had to put more square pegs in square holes, or are you saying that there's still round pegs in square holes, or do you think that there's still another transfer window required to make sure that Pompey are going to be safe, or would you be confident with what you've got now?
I think we need to. There's some key holes in this team that need to be sort of filled, and that's number one in centre midfield. We need someone who's just another level kind of dynamic in a box to box way to replace the gap that Freddie Potts left last season. We've tried to bring in a few players, Luke LaRue and people from abroad, etc. It's just not quite panned out. Playing John Swift, who you guys will probably know, he's from Pompey, played for West Brom, playing him in the pivot, it doesn't work. He's really a number 10 who needs someone else to kind of track back to cover for him. So we just need a good centre midfielder. As I said, I think the front four are okay. We need another striker because let's put it into Derby terms, right? You've got, I know he's out injured. You've got Carlton Morris. You've got Patrick Adjaman. That's 2. You've got further depth. Pompey don't. They got Connor Chaplin. They got Connor Chaplin, who's really a 10. They've got Colby Bishop, and then after that, it drops off to young Australian we signed and someone from St Johnson called, Mackenzie Kirk. We need another quality striker. You can't be rolling with one striker in the championship. And the last position is at left back. Our left back's been injured. We're currently playing a right back at left back. And Zach Swanson's doing a really good job there, to be fair. And he's kind of 2-footed, so he can sort of play there. But I reckon we need 3 or 4 good signings and 2 really good signings. But we have the bones in some ways up top to be able to carry this through and not be in the bottom 3 come the end of the season.
Yeah, I think we're both fortunate. I think all clubs are fortunate, really, this year that obviously Sheffield Wednesday have got their dilemmas. So I always sort of say the bottom 2 now because unless they have something miraculously happen, and we played them on Monday, as you probably saw, and everyone can see their problems. They're only going to get worse and worse. Those guys are giving it everything out there. But going back to Pompey, looking at your team squad now, and there's names on there that I recognise. Like you said, you mentioned Josh Murphy, who was the assist king last year. I think he got 14 assists, and I remember him back in the days of Oxford. I know that Derby were linked with him before you guys got him. Has there been anyone broke through that's really sort of raised the eyebrows? Like I'm looking down that you've got a lad on loan from Tottenham, Yang, a winger. Has he managed? The Asian market is becoming very strong in the Championship and certainly the Premier League. Is he another one to watch?
Well, he's come out of South Korea, and he's got a lot of hype coming out of that country. He played for the senior side. He got recently called up again for the senior side. He's only 19 years old. So to put that into perspective, he actually filled in on the left hand side when Josh Murphy was out, and he looked really good against Leicester. I mean, he scored a couple of really key goals for us. He's done well. He played on the right the other day, and he really struggled. So he's a 19-year-old kid who can come on. He has ability. He can score goals and he can make an impact. But he needs to be a player that's really a rotation player, I think. There's always crazy stuff from Spurs fans going like, "Oh, he's not getting enough minutes. We need to, send him to our top 6 championship side." Or there's talk of Hamburg getting him, or all this kind of stuff. And it's like maybe slow down a bit because he's 19 years old, and the reason he's not getting substantial game time is that he needs to be rotated a bit. He needs to be blooded in a little bit as well. You can't be running a Saturday, Tuesday, EFL schedule really for a 19-year-old kid. So he has the ability, he can score goals, but I really like him as an impact player rather than a starting player.
Has he suffered with the physicality of the league as well? Because
Yeah.
we've had a couple of players that have really have come in with all the talent in the world, but the reality is the physicality of the championship has completely taken them out their stride. One, for instance, Kenzo Highmine, we had big ideas for him coming from Holland, and he's gone back on loan to the Dutch league because, and then now he's starting to pay dividends for him because the championship he just could not put on that stone of muscle and what have you. Do you think that's the problem with the Pompey team in general, including Yang, or with the young players that you have in the squad?
I'd say the problem with this team was originally it was just slow getting in the centre of midfield and getting the ball forward. So we have a very young team generally, but in centre midfield we're really slow. And then that's why it looked better with Koznovsky on. I wouldn't say that we're not physical enough, maybe, but with the young players online, yeah. I mean, look, Yang is a 19-year-old Korean kid who, he does have quite a low center of gravity. So he has the ability to sometimes move the ball quickly and beat a player so that he doesn't get pushed off the ball, which is actually is quite a good skill. You can tell he's technically gifted. We'll just have to see really whether that translates overall. But I think he's a kid that's got bags of ability. He just needs to there's a difference, isn't there, between playing Premier League two or abroad football to playing Championship starting football. So he's done well, I think, and Mousinho says he'll be here for the rest of the season. So we'll see.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, you're right about the PL2. A lot of people will go and watch that and think, wow, this kid's a genius, blah, blah, blah. But they pretty much don't touch each other in that league. There's almost like a handshake pre-game that, we'll play tippy-tappy nice football, but these are all our future stars. And I've always sort of asked people to watch that with precaution and judge them when they get onto the championship or a bigger platform. Hugh, what's your thoughts of Derby County this season and what you've seen, and how do you see them challenging? Do you think they'll stay where they are, or do you feel that this is a team that could be a dark horse that can slip through into the top six?
I thought you'd be a safe mid-table team this season, and I think that that's pretty fair from where you are. I think that's what you want. You had all this turbulence as a team, as a club, haven't you? And this complete madness as fans that you've had to go through, and then back into League One, you've managed to get up, having to endure Wayne Rooney. So I think maybe for Derby fans, it'd be quite nice to have some mid-table security, build your team, build your squad, and from there, just then you can look at the playoffs. I'll be honest though, I don't think it's impossible in the championship for any team to make a charge or whatever you want to say. Like you can put some form together, and I don't think anyone thought Preston would be up there or Millwall this season. So it's definitely not impossible. It's a very competitive league, so I wouldn't write you off in that sense. I think that you're a good team. I think that's fair. You've got better squad depth than the worst teams like us and Oxford and other teams down the bottom of the table who are struggling. So as I said, I'd put you as a decent mid-table championship side, and I think that any mid-table championship side has the ability to put a run together, put some form together. You're a very physical team. I mean, you're second in the league for fouls. I think you're up there for yellow cards. I mean, I like Carlton Morris, for instance. A bit of a joke. My work crew all sport Barnsley, including a Spanish lad who worked there. So I've actually been to the playoff final to see Barnsley Sheffield Wednesday. Obviously, they lost. Probably my fault being a Pompey fan being there. But I've actually watched him a lot, and I like him as a player. One of the lads on my podcast, Andy, doesn't like him, but I've always thought he was decent. Luton, whatever, they were a complete mess, weren't they, last season? But and I think it's cool you brought in a player from Charlotte FC. I think that's super cool up front as well. So yeah, I think John Eustace is a good manager, and I think he's always been able to get the best out of a team who are maybe a middling team. You look at Blackburn before he left there, and you think, all right, he left and they just crumbled. Now they're just above us. So I think you got as good a chance as anyone, but I put you as a mid-table team.
Yeah, it's a strange one. There's a lot of Derby County. I always think Portsmouth and Derby are very similar in fan base. That when the high is high, we're very high, and when the low is low, we're very low because we're both very similar in areas which relies heavily on one business, you would say, like, Portsmouth Naval, but the football club is massive. And I remember when obviously the fans ran your football club for a couple of years. Now, I quickly wanted to touch on that before we go on to the game. How did that come about? Were you involved? Were you too young at the point? Is there fan involvement still with the board?
So I remember the PS2, which is the Port Supporters Trust. They have a pretty open membership, and they are still involved in the club. That was part of the agreement, I believe, when the Eisners, who are the family who owns the football club, Michael Eisner, former CEO of Disney and Paramount and stuff like that. I think we're like the seventh richest owners in the championship, but the model itself is all about sustainability, and I think the fans are quite torn on that model. Um, and to be honest, yeah, my dad and stuff paid in a certain amount of money. We basically had to like buy shares and what was going on, and the fans basically clumped together. I think it was raised a couple of million quid. This is one that someone else is definitely gonna know, like the actual figure. That's something I should know, but a couple of million quid, should we say, to save the club, and the fans managed to put the best bid in and buy the club out. And from there, Fratton Park needed a lot of work, and it was going to be difficult. Although some fans disagree, some fans really think that what the current ownership have done is not really much better than the fans could have done. So it really depends. And I think at the moment, people are a little bit more on them as well, because they came out in our annual video being like, yeah, we think this team's good enough to eventually challenge and get in the Premier League. And everyone's like, have you actually watched the team currently? Do you actually, the investment, you can't be chucking 500k at this player and 300k at that player and then kind of expect this to be a quality team. So there is a bit of disconnect. The Fratton Park looks nicer, for away fans. It's done up a bit, and you got a concourse, and same for home fans. We've put eateries everywhere, painted it, made it safer, slightly increased capacity. So it's very slow and steady, as some American owners are, and very opposite to say someone like Coventry or Birmingham or one of the more flashy rich owner groups.
Yeah, but it's nice that you still have got that historical, you know, ground. Fratton Park is, I don't use the word hostile because it always comes across as angry, but I use it as a compliment that it is always a place to go where the crowd are close to the grass. I love that about a pitch. You remember I don't know if you remember the old baseball ground, but you know, when you have someone like Bobby Charlton who says in his autobiography the baseball ground was the most difficult, frightening place to play because of the crowd were literally on top of you. Do you get that at Fratton Park? I've always enjoyed going there. Is it still the same?
Yeah, 100%. It's the same ground. It's not Nothing's really changed apart from they've painted it up and put some concession stands and things like that there. And they actually built a new front to the away end, and it looks a little bit Disneyland for me. But there we go. They've got a kind of mock Tudor. It's welcome to the Fratton Park experience. I'm sort of looking for the roller coaster entrance, but it's one of those things really that yeah, it's the same. The fans have been a little bit more frustrated. Look, before that win, it was like 1 win in 10. And then we've got a difficult game in our game in hand against Charlton, who we never win against. I mean, they call our ground 3 Points Park. It's just, unfortunate situation as well as that, obviously. But yeah, so yeah, the fan base is the same. If we can get a couple of wins, draws, just try and get everyone back on track. Because, the first 15 minutes against Blackburn, it's no. The fans are really going for it as well. And then you concede again, and it is difficult for any fan base, I suppose, going through that. But it's the same vibe. I do agree with you. All these soulless bowls, I'm not a massive fan of, and there is a plan potentially to add another tier to the North Stand or rotate the pitch or all this kind of other stuff. And it seems to be being held up by a bridge coming from the station, which I think is absolutely bonkers because that just seems like rubbish. So Arsenal have got one tube station, or everyone in London. Like I work in London, I'm looking around thinking, a train station. It just seems really stupid. So some people think that's an excuse, but I think we want to stay at Fratton Park if possible and expand that by another 8, 10,000 because we sell out and we've got the maximum amount of season ticket holders and we've got a waiting list for season ticket holders. So I'm not sure how many thousand, but it's quite a long wait. So really, we're missing out on revenue there, aren't we? We're missing out on, I reckon we'd probably get quite easily an extra 8,000, 10,000 28, 30,000, that sort of level. So we are missing out. We could give away fans an extra thousand as well for the likes of you guys who travel well, not like Blackburn or whoever.
So, how many did Blackburn bring? Was it literally a
800
few?
maybe,
Oh,
something like that.
wow. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think Fratton Park, adding that top tier, you keep the noise, you keep the intensity. You're right about the concrete bowl. It's an issue I have. I'm very much as you can tell by my face, I'm in my 50s, and I do miss the old grounds, and I was working at BBG for years, and I was a fan prior to that, and it was my first game back in the 70s. And Fratton Park always brings about that memory. And I always go, when I go to Portman Road at Ipswich, it's the same. I just feel tradition should be kept somewhere. And also, just on a digress, I think Charlton, you'll probably remove that hoodoo because their form is absolutely shite at the moment. So hopefully, this is the year to remove that curse. Quickly onto the game Saturday. How do you see it going?
Look, I've been so like feeling like I've been stuck in this negative bubble for a while and I think we're quite balanced. We're like a never too high, never too low kind of podcast, and you have to do it for like 7 years. Like you can't let things affect you too much. But I went for a really lofty 1-0 away win, and there's a lot of irony to that because we can't really defend set pieces, by the way, and we can't really defend corners, although we actually did that and actually scored from a set piece, which is like absolutely unknown. The commentators were shocked. Literally, the local commentators like, we scored from a corner. We scored. I'm going to go, in my heart, I went for a 1-0 Chaplin. That's just really because I want him to win. I want Connor Chaplin's not scored yet. He's a Pompey lad. I want him to get a goal. But if I'm really being, put my hat on it, let's take a step back here. All right. Probably say 2 on Derby, but we'll wait and see what happens. But it's an interesting matchup. We'll see if we can take that confidence and form for the last part of that Blackburn game. And it'll be quite interesting to see, does Mousinho start Bishop up front in this game? Because if he does, you'll see that he's taking that template, and then that might be how he goes going forward. So you might see that momentum. If he doesn't, and he puts Langy back up front, it's more about that was good, but we'll see how it goes. And that might be, sort of kind of good news for Derby fans to have a look at when the team sheet comes out on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the table now, and actually, it's game 22. It flies this time of year. Games just come and go and come and go. Um, it's interesting that you say that you have issues with defending corners, and as you said prior, Derby's team is huge. I've never seen a team so big at the back for a long, long time, and we are making sort of a reputation of scoring from set plays with Joe Ward, who scored 2 against you guys a couple of years ago. And going back to corners, I remember you scoring 2 for us last year. I think Atkinson scored either end. He's no longer with you guys. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Derby win as well. I think that there will be a very tight game. I think open play goals will be of a premium, and I think all 3 goals will come from set plays because we're also got an Achilles heel at the moment of defending corners. But Hugh, it's been amazing to talk to you as always. The PO4 cast, where can people find you?
Right, Mike's back on. It was nearly like a blunder at the start and a blunder at the end there. Yeah, so you can just find us on X, on Insta, wherever. And we're part of a group called Pompey News now. That's our sort of like football channel that happens for our writing. We've got a site, we've got a group there as well. So if you go to X or you go to let's call it X. I've called it that before. Go to Twitter, go to Twitter, go to Insta at Pompey News now. You'll find our stuff and yeah, go from there.
Hugh, PO4 podcast, fantastic to hear from you. And I don't wish you luck for Saturday, of course, but looking at the table, it's a bit looking a bit precarious at the moment, but I'm sure you'll turn it round. Portsmouth have got a fantastic. I'm not just saying this, but you do have a genuinely fantastic fan base. I've always been thrilled to go down there, and we've always been welcomed and never have any issues at all. And also, we can get some sand in our shoes. So, Hugh, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Let's hope maybe we can send 3 stand Oxford down instead, eh?
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot.
Well, Gary Rowett still lives in the area, so I'm sure his newspaper collection from Duffield will go down well when he gets relegated. Anyway, that's the Rams preview show with the Rams Review podcast and the PO forecast. All I can say is up the Rams.
Thanks.